episode of the high quality, highly produced Sealife Science Streams, which I'm now realising might not even be written the right way around. If you want to know about the big question today that we're answering is what is research, then this video is for you. My name is Elizabeth and I go under the name of Lee Mumbles, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am a researcher and today we're going to be chatting all about research in a nice chilled live stream. So if you haven't already, go get yourself a cuppa. Oh, look what this mug says. And come and join in. If you're watching this and you're not watching it live, then that is perfectly fine. This video is actually replacing kind of what I would usually do is when I talk to camera, edit it and upload it. So stay tuned. This isn't just a live stream. This is actually kind of a mix up of my channel of what is going on. And I'm just going to explain that very briefly and then we'll get on with it. So I am a PhD student, a PhD researcher, but I'm getting to the end of my time and I'm also now balancing this with a job. And online I do science communication and all of these science communicatory things. Now making videos is really it takes ages. It actually takes ages. And so for what is a 15-minute video, it's at least 4 hours to anywhere to like 10 to 12 hours of editing, depending on how fancy I'm getting. And then you've got the filming and the writing. And I need to pass my PhD, so that time that is allocated to that I am absorbing back and taking for the PhD, but this means that we get to spend Wednesday evenings together so that I get to share all of my information that I want to share, have fun, play games, do sciencey streamy things, and we can do that every Wednesday evening by going live and cutting out the middleman of editing. So there we go. Now, if anyone has any questions, then please chuck them in the comments below. And if you're watching this not live, then just chuck them in the comments and I will get back to answering you because I love to answer all the comments. Oakley dokley. So today we're going on about what is research. Now, I didn't know what research was and I didn't really know what it was as a job, even until I did a bit of research as a dissertation project as an undergrad at university, and kind of blew my mind slightly. So I wanted to share what research was to see if you're interested, if this is a career path for you at any age, or if this is just something that gives you a bit more of an insight as to what scientists and researchers get up to on their day-to-day lives. Now, as a kid, I loved reading all of these books about wizards and magic and things, and I always loved the part of it that was like, okay, if you were going to be a wizard, what type of wizard would you be? You can't just be, a broad wizard. You would have to pick, would you be a wizard that looked after a certain element? Or were you a wizard that looked after potions? And all of those magical things. And to do this, you would have to do certain tasks. An element earth wizard might go into the forest and study forest creatures. And it's that weird tiny little bits of information of like trying to think about what sparks interest that kind of feels like how you go down a research pathway. What research basically is finding something that's not been found out before and trying to find the answer to that, which can be as big or as small as you want, which is really exciting because either one, you think, isn't everything already found out already? Doesn't everything already do we know everything? The answer to that is absolutely not. And the more you go in research, the more you realise we don't know. And the more exciting you get and the more you want to do more research. Or the other thing you might think of is how like that's just too much. That's like, how do I find something that doesn't exist? How am I going to do that? You have to be really smart and sciencey and I can't, that's out of my remit. Actually, I have found that research is far more about the person because than it is about, learning and knowledge and science and things. You do learn a lot, you use your knowledge a lot, but, I as a scientist am not knowledgeable about everything. I only know my very, very niche specific area. And what research is great as a career for that is that you get to be an expert in this weird niche area. So if you're someone that's like, I really like a worm that lives in a certain bit of soil, or I really like not just trees but tree roots, and I am a marine biologist that loves the little tiny things without a backbone, particularly barnacles, and I'm not so fussed about the big giant whales unless they've got barnacles on, in which case. But there's a place for you in that scientific world, and research can start from any age. You go outside and you wonder, why is that leaf that colour? Well, that leaf's that colour because it has a certain pigment in it for photosynthesis, and you learn about how photosynthesis happens and all of these different things, and then you're like, oh, well, pigments change for different things, well, why is that? Then you go and learn about evolution and adaptation, and then maybe you find a weird plant that you really like, and then you're like, I really like that plant. And then at this point you maybe go to uni and you're like, this plant is interesting. Then you find something weird about that plant that no one else has noticed, and you go, haha, my job could actually be to find out this weird thing about this plant that doesn't exist. And maybe that weird thing about the plant that you didn't know existed actually turns out to be something amazing that we can use as humans in the wider world, or it doesn't. And you just find something new and you publish a paper, and away you go. Your first researchy job has kind of been done. That is where and what research kind of is. And so I want you to kind of think about it as just like your imagination. And the reason I say it's so personable is not everyone is going to want to study that thing that you want to study. In fact, most people aren't. And everyone has different experiences, everyone has different interests, and that all combines into this amazing scientific community of people all following their passions and all following what they want to do. And together as a scientific community, we kind of look to fill in the gaps. We're like, okay, I like barnacles, but a lot of people have studied this part of barnacle. Maybe I'll do this bit that no one has studied. And then we can work together, and I can learn off of you that's learnt things about barnacles, and I can learn my bit myself, and I'll push it a bit further. And then someone goes, oh, I like what you've done. Can I do this bit? And someone else takes it that much further. And that's just a really exciting kind of community to be in, and one of the benefits of science and it being, of that happening. All of these new discoveries, all of these new things are happening because of scientists out there researching things and working together to find out different problems. And it's really exciting because I really feel like there's space for just so many more creatively sciencey minds to come and join and solve either the big questions. I don't know, I imagine physics is the thing that has big questions. Do we know what gravity is yet? Probably. That kind of questions. Or you can go to the small questions of what glue does a barnacle use, which could actually fix loads of different things. So that is just really exciting to me, and something that I didn't know you could really do. But that's a bit vague. That's me telling you, okay, you're going to go out and solve some world questions. You might be shocked to find that's a job. It is. But there's more to it than, going out and hunting for a question and kind of come out with it. So on to the next unbelievably well-produced show. What does a researcher do? How do we do this? How do we find questions and come up with questions, and what do we get up to in our daily lives? Because it's very, it's a big thing to ask, come up with a new bit of science. And that is a feeling that a lot of scientists have when they start. Okay, well, what do I do now? What I love about being a researcher is that it's a very varied day, or a very varied year. So either you have periods of time that are really busy and you're doing lots of different things, or you have periods of time where you're also still really busy. You're busy a lot as a researcher, but you're doing the same thing, just a lot of it for a very long time. And it's very tedious. It seems to jump between these two. There's a very often, very little time that's of the balanced kind in the middle, is what I've found. So the different activities that you can do as a researcher, and I'll kind of categorise them into long and tedious, and lots of it in a row, and lots of it still, but often around lots of different things. Doesn't mean to say that either's bad. You know, you will find it tedious because if you do anything every day for 3 months, it will start to wear on you. But but everyone's version of what they do and do not like differs. So you do, surprisingly, a lot of writing. That is probably one of the biggest things that you do. That is in the long and tedious section, and also slightly in the every now and again, because you'll have to keep trying to keep up with the writing as you go. But a lot of the time you get stuck with a big old lump of writing that you need to do. And this is because as scientists, as we learn things, we need to record it, we need to write it down, and we need to write it in a certain way that everyone else in the scientific community can understand it. That means you're going to have to learn a lot of things about scientific writing techniques and just all of, like, it's very like finicky things, like how you reference. So you have to, if you make a statement that hasn't come from you, so if I'm saying barnacles are the best in the world, I can't make that claim. I would have to be like, barnacles are the best in the world because this paper has said so, 2010. That's not the kind of information that you actually reference. It'll be like, this species of barnacle is taxonomically identified by, and then you give the reference, that kind of stuff. Or, you know, this is the strongest metal in the world because this study tested all metals in the world and it was the strongest, that kind of thing. And so it's learning all that, which actually takes a while. It takes a lot of practice, and I'll talk a bit more about how you become a researcher and why that's important, but that's high up on the list. So if you're looking to go into science and research, writing is up there with something you'll have to do a lot, but it's also something you have a lot of time to learn. You learn how good or bad, how to write well over years and years and years, and because you do it throughout your career the whole time, you know, you're just going to get better, but a lot of the time, like, it takes you 3 or 4 years, 5 years, even more, and then you keep learning every day. So don't be put off if you're not a massive fan of writing or not very confident with it, because the support's there to do it, and because you're doing it so often, it just kind of slots into place eventually, as all things do when you do a lot of it. So you're doing a lot of that. That requires you to sit in an office a lot. Other things that you will do in the office is stuff like, it's a lot like running your own business sometimes, I feel like, being a researcher, because you're balancing a lot of different things. You'll have to sit there and do lots of, like, you have to be in charge of the finances, making sure that as you're researching, what money you're spending and your budget is all accounted for. So a lot of that is like Excel spreadsheets and calculating, writing things and thinking of things. A lot of time spent doing forms of buying stuff in through the right means and of looking for the best deals and all of those things. So a lot of like searching and Googling and all of that kind of stuff is a big part of the job. But that is one of the busy but not very often things. When you need to buy stuff in for a project, that takes up a lot of time. But once you've got all the stuff, you're not, you know, searching for new stuff to buy all the time. Just kind of sip of tea. I feel like maybe as I continue doing these live streams, I'll get like, I need like a mini sound effect for when I'm drinking tea to put some, like, you know, elevator music on. What else do you do? I'm trying to build up to the exciting stuff. Can you see I'm picking the less exciting stuff? You also apply for grants a lot. So these are, as a scientist, how you kind of fund how it goes about, which I will get into a bit more about how you become a researcher. But that is also another big chunk of time in writing, is basically proposing projects. When you come up with this fantastic idea that you want to do, you have to kind of apply for money from different places. And a lot of that is about writing and what's going to come from the projects and all of that kind of stuff. These are all key parts of being a researcher. And then what else do we get up to? Okay, we're going to some more exciting stuff now. So you do a lot of, you can do, when it comes to like actually getting data, learning stuff and all of this, I suppose reading, so I'm going to jump back. You read a lot of papers. To write, you have to read a lot. So a lot of time is spent reading other people's work, and then using that work to inform your own writing and your own stuff. So you will spend a lot of time reading about a lot of science, which is kind of why everything is standardized in this like one way that you write, which is the scientific way, so that everyone can kind of read everyone else's work and get the gist of it. So when you do research, you either you write about it and you get thing, and a lot of writing goes in beforehand, so you kind of have a plan, and then you got to go out and check stuff and see things and get that data. You can either do that from data sources. So if you love data, if you love looking at spreadsheets, if you love looking at patterns and algorithms and all of these different things, you can do research just based off of the mass amount of data that is around, whether that's data collected by someone else that's not looked at and that you have time to look at, and they'll be like, great, that's great, can you look at that for me? Whether it's from, say, something online that just creates data all the time and is open source, and you can go and do research with that. Or something like sensors, weather stuff, like stations are collecting data all the time, stuff that's there that's for you to use. You can go ahead and you can use that. But a lot of the time you are coming up with ways in the lab as a scientist. It will differ for researchers in different things. This is kind of more of a sciencey researcher job because I'm a marine biologist / engineer, so that's where my background is coming from. You will spend a lot of time in the lab, which could mean an absolute insane amount of stuff. I don't think I could sit here and list off all of the things. I'm going to try right now, but we'll see. So lab work can entail anything from dissections of different animals. It could entail looking at cells and staining them. It could look at collecting and identifying things. So say a boat will go off to the Antarctic and maybe pick up a load of species, or the deep sea or somewhere, and then you can look at that under a microscope and work out what's living there. Or you can just go rock pooling and have a look at what's living there, and if you need to identify it, bring it back to the lab. Stuff like that. You can do, I'm trying to think so much. You can look at like disease stuff in a lab, whether that's animal diseases or very relevant human diseases. Lots of stuff like that that's lab work based. You can look at, I suppose this counts as lab work. There's lots of like tank experiments as a marine biology world. So lots of tanks with different conditions. Maybe we're testing to see how species react to increased carbon dioxide in water or increased temperature, which is a lot of stuff that could happen with climate change. Trying to predict stuff like that. Looking at how things reproduce. Behaviour studies, seeing how things move or react to certain things, or testing how things react to colour. All of the things that might be, if you need to test anything to do with the chemistry of the water, something that's in a controlled environment in a lab is always kind of done in that. You can do stuff like wave experiments. There's like wave machines in labs that you can test stuff with waves. You can do more of like this is kind of more of an engineering thing, but you can also do it in biology. Like you can scan stuff in and look at the 3D structure. That's really cool lab work. You can put in, you can do chemical tests, so machines that will tell you the chemistry of things. There's big fancy microscopes that scanning electron microscopes that get unbelievably tiny, itsy bitsy. Zoomed in stuff of different species and different creatures or different materials or different things. There's probably loads. There's loads. Like there's just tons. There's absolutely tons of stuff that you can do in the lab and design things. You can look at plastics. You can examine microplastics and all of that stuff. You can do that in the lab. Yes, there's a lot of work. Again, look, it's just amazing that you can do all this different stuff. So what happens with the lab work is you will do the lab work, you will set up experiment. A lot of time will be spent on experimental design, making sure it's repeatable, making sure that you can change stuff with it. Then that will go on to, you will write what you do. So you plan it, then you write what you do and how you've done it, and maybe usually, and there always will be something that goes wrong. So writing down, how did you correct for that? What was my change? How did I change it? And then you get the data and the results, and then you write it up, which I will get onto in a bit. So then we go on to doing field work. Again, so much stuff that can happen. I'm going to talk about field work from the point of view as a biologist, marine biologist. So you can go out rock pooling. You can go out into the woods, into fields, into anywhere you can get to on land, bogs, peats, swamps, coral reefs, mangroves. You can scuba dive, you can snorkel, you can go on a research boat, and you might be on a lab on a boat, or you might be out in the field. You can do field work taking water samples, so going to take water from different places. You can deploy big sensors in the middle of the ocean on field work. You can put stuff in the sea and take it back in and see what's living on it, which is what I do. You can do that in like a harbour, or you can do that offshore. You can do that putting a big like device in if that's happening. You can, with field work, you can look at animal behaviour. You can look at counting numbers. You can sit on a cliff edge and count how many seals there are or how many birds there are. You can count what their behaviour's doing. You can do that underwater. You can take pictures. You can do transects a lot of the time, so you take samples of certain areas, you do transects of different things to see what lives in a certain habitat, how many fish are in that habitat. You could do, I mean, anything you can think of that's outside that is probably there's something in science that has been done for it. Going into the Amazon rainforest to find new species, or sitting on top of a ship and putting an ROV down into the deep sea and identifying what you find. Going to Antarctica and then working with the British Antarctic Survey and getting to look at what grows under sea ice and all of these awesome things, or going on the sea ice or in the very, very cold waters. It's really exciting, and there's lots of stuff that you can do. And I would say though that fieldwork takes up not very much time. There's not a lot of fieldwork versus the rest of it. You might maybe have a season where you need to do stuff in summer. It's really busy because it's again like a 3-month thing. We're like, right, I need to identify everything that lives in this habitat, or 6 habitats in the next 3 months, and I have to be there 5 days every week for 6 weeks or something. And then you don't do any fieldwork for the rest of the year. It could be 1 day every month. It could be less than that. It's very rarely more than that, because you also have all the writing and all the stuff to do afterwards in the data collection. Now, I'm not going to say too much more about the fieldwork because I have an exciting video coming out, which is a collaboration with someone where we get into this in far more detail. So I'm excited for that one. Really excited for that one actually. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. So you've got your data from all of these different things. And that's how you do research. You're going out to find something. But really, again, it kind of comes from the writing. It comes from the thinking. This is why I said earlier it's so important to think about that as a researcher, that it's from you and from your mind and your curiosity and your excitement about things, because all of these things, the lab work that you do and the field work that you do, is chosen based on what's feasible, how much money you have, and what you think, and it's limited really by how much you can think and then how much money you can get to do it. Which leads us on to, well, I suppose, what else do we do? I won't jump ahead too quickly, so just really quickly. So you get the data as a researcher. You then analyse the data. So in biology, you have to do stats. You basically have to say that, say you saw a dog, and part of your research was to work out, do all dogs sit when they see a lamppost? I don't know, it's coming out the top of my head. I'm tired. And you see that 4 of the 5 dogs that are female sit when they get to a lamppost, and 1 female dog does not. But then only 2 and I was going to say 2.5. Let's go with 3 because I don't know where half a dog's coming from. But 3 of the male dogs do not sit at lampposts, and 2 of them do. You have to basically prove with stats that the 5 dogs of each different type that you watched didn't just do that because of chance, because hey ho, they wanted to, or that was just what was going to happen. They did it because that was their behaviour, and you're going to find the answer to your study. It's more likely that when you run the test, that the 4 out of the 5 females that sat did it because most females sit. You can say that yes, female dogs do sit when they get to a lamppost. What is this? I don't know why I'm talking about this, but we'll go with it. But the 3 or say 2 that don't sit, that do sit, probably might not be. And we have fancy statistical testing that tells us that when we do these sort of studies, what is the confidence level? And we say at the end, basically, with 95% confidence, we can say that yes, female dogs do sit when they sit at lampposts, or no, male dogs do not sit at a lamppost. And obviously you kind of do like the bigger that gets, you know, the more, you know, it's more than just 5 observations of stuff. You have to have a certain number for the tests to run, and it just kind of makes sure that what we're doing is we're not claiming something that's just down to chance. It's all down to, but it's hopefully down to what you think it is. So you get this data, you write it up, and then you put things out called papers, which is what you were reading to start with. You provide your little new nugget of information to the scientific world throughout a paper. And you do that for as many different times as you can go on. But there's other stuff that you get to do as a researcher that is a really cool benefit mixed in with this. So that's like the crux of the job. But once you've got the paper, or once you're doing the science, you can go out and you can share it. So I'm just going to have another sip of tea. Cue the tea music, even though I don't have it. You can share it. So there's things that are called conferences, where online in the last couple of years, but normally, lots of different scientists from around the world or wherever it is all convene in the same place for a couple of days to discuss science. It's my absolute favourite. I love conferences. And here you present your research, you present your findings, and you basically spend the days networking, getting to meet people, talking about different things, and meeting all the scientists and hearing all about the amazing science. Not only does this help us not repeat ourselves, because, you know, if you're working on something around the world, how are you going to know what's happening if you don't keep up to date with everything? Papers take about 9 months to get published on average-ish, I think, just because of the back and forth that need to happen. So you don't want to wait that long to make sure that you're not wasting time. So conferences are a way to keep up with that. It's just a way to share, and it's a way to come together to connect. So at conferences, people are talking about, you know, oh, this bit of money is here, we can go for this, maybe we can work together. Oh, I love your study, that's great, maybe we can do this. Oh, what I've learned from here I'm going to take into mine. And it all becomes this amazing network of collaboration and just awesome science-ness in a very quite intense couple of days, which usually involves some really fun talks during the day and some nice socialising in the evening as well. And as a scientist, you get to go to these, you apply, you might do one a year, you might do a big one every couple of years, and they can be around the world. People I know have gone to like Hawaii or California. I got to go to Italy for a week, which was paid for, to do at an engineering conference, which was amazing. I've been to Orkney for a conference, which was amazing. And there's all these just fantastic opportunities to do that. And I know that the world is not quite the same as it was, but usually there is a way that means that you do get to travel as part of the job, which is really, really fun. And I loved it. / hopefully love it if it comes back. And so that's really good. You also get to travel if you go on field works and all that kind of stuff. You also get a load of training as a researcher. There's loads of options and different things that you can get trained in and do. You can do science communication. You can get trained in things like, you can go into like things like policy and government, advising governments and stuff like that. You can get training and go into that direction. And all of these different things can happen because it's quite flexible, because you are basically in charge of your own time as a researcher. You might be part of a research group, you might have, you know what, let's go on to the next section and then I'll talk about that. What is this? Oh no, my highly high-tech thing has been flummoxed. I've run out of order. How to become a researcher. So how you become a researcher? The way, there's a couple of ways, I think. So if you want to go down the route where you're the one that becomes the lead in putting these grants in, you kind of have to go down this route. You kind of have to go with, you don't have to, but it's the main way. It's the main way. You would do an undergrad, then you go on and get a master's or a PhD, and then you become what is called a postdoctoral researcher, and then you become what is called like a principal investigator. So during a PhD or a master's, it's great. You're picking your research project, and you have a supervisor, but it's all on you to do the research project, which is the stage that I'm at. Then you get into post-doctoral roles where you can apply for funding on your own to do your own idea, or someone called, like, that's known as a principal investigator. I think that's what they're called. I've not been one yet. You will apply for like a much bigger bit of money that's like starts like a research lab or a research partnership with a couple of different unis, and in that is money for postdoctoral researchers. So they will advertise a job post that says, we need a researcher to work on the coral reefs of Australia, and you go, yes please, and apply for that job role. So there's two ways that you can do it. You can apply for the money yourself, get the money, and hopefully go find a place to do that work, or it will be advertised for you. And then when you get to be a principal investigator, it's much bigger sums of money, into the millions sometimes, to do a big impactful bit of work with a lot of people all working together, which I just find really exciting. Eventually, fingers crossed, I will end up at that stage at some point. So that's kind of the classical way to do it, but what that is you're doing the research, I suppose, research projects as they go, picking up research projects, doing all the stages I kind of talked about, moving on to the next one. One of the downsides of being a researcher is that contracts are usually very short or not long term. So you will get the contract for the 2 years that you are contracted to do that bit of research, and you have to get that research done within 2 years, and then you will have to go and find another bit of money or another job somewhere else to try and do that. If you're a principal investigator, you might have a permanent job as a lecturer in a university, and bringing that money in means that you can do research along that, and you might have a permanent position and you bring money in, and it's a bit more permanent higher up you go. But sometimes you bring that money in, you have it for 4 years, and then again you hopefully find more money again in 4 years. So it's not the most like stable of jobs, in the sense that you can't, unless you then go down the route of like getting a job as a lecturer, which gets easier the more you go down the research route, actually, I think, because you're getting more research out there, that it isn't the most stable of jobs. But it also means that you could live around the world, which is quite nice, in that every couple of years you can move to a new place, experience a new thing. You're not tied down. It doesn't work for everybody, and there are definitely ways that you can become a researcher and stay in the same place, but it is very competitive, and everyone's always applying for lots of bits of money, and it's very, very competitive. So it's one of those things of, it's a lot of failure, a lot of applying for stuff, a lot of not getting it, but then when you do get it, oh, it's so good. It's so nice to get to be able to have a job where you are doing exactly what you want to do, or finding that research project that you have proposed and you have done, and you're doing it, is like a massive joy, and is really fulfilling. So that's kind of the classic route of doing it. But you're doing all of the different stages as this. There's different bits, and researchers can't do their job without this whole team of people either, which you get less, I suppose, at the student stage, because as a student you're kind of balancing a lot of things and doing a lot of things yourself. But as you get further up, you get a lot more flexibility in bringing other people in, which is really nice. And so say you love the field work and the lab work, so that's what you really like. You could become a research technician and sit at that level, and your job is to help out and do the field work with people, facilitate the lab work. And really, without technicians, it's very difficult to do stuff, because we're doing all of this other stuff, and technicians are incredibly smart and know exactly how every bit of kit works and know the best places to go and do the field work and all of this different stuff. So if this is something that you are interested in and like the idea of being in that research world, but maybe don't want the pressure of having to try and get the job every couple of years or having to do all this stuff, you can go and become a research technician. And I don't know what level you have to be. You might need a degree. Some cases you might not. You might just need, say you're a skipper of a boat that's been a skipper of a commercial boat for 5 years, and also done has sea experience. You become a fieldwork technician for boats. I imagine. I don't know. I'm not the hiring person for all this. I'm just trying to think of different opportunities that are out there. And so you can join at kind of the research technician kind of level. There's also science communication jobs. There's also jobs in like the finance aspect of research and stuff that might not be research itself, but you're still kind of in that role of helping people get when they've got the money, like where it goes and all this kind of different stuff. So it's not quite the same as research, but it's in that research world, and there's lots of different options. So I would say that is the two biggest things to getting into research. And then the other thing of research, which isn't quite like an academic research job, would be something more on the lines of like a science communicator that does research in the sense that you're not going and getting the data yourself, but you're researching around the science and researching in more of a sense of I'm reading what's out there and I'm going to take that in and convey it to people, rather than going out and finding something new yourself to then convey that. But it also means that you can research and learn a lot more stuff and convey a lot more stuff than your very niche little aspect. So I think that really does cover what research is and how you get into it. Or it covers some of it. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'd love to answer them. And chuck them in the comments down below, and I will answer them. Let me know what you think of this new live stream series. It's going to be a bit more upbeat, more highly produced today. It was a nice chill stream. We had a nice cup of tea. Again, tea break. A nice chat. It will be every Wednesday, potentially at 8. I might move it to 8:30. I'll have a think. Let me know what time is better for you all. And next week's going to be a Halloween themed version of something. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm going to try Halloween themed something. It's going to be fun. I know the topic it's going to be on. It's going to be cool. It's really awesome. So come and check that out and come and have fun with me next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And that just leaves me with the very, very high-tech end credits and the person that has done the stuff today. It's me. Have a fab Wednesday, everybody, and I will catch you next Wednesday. Have a fab week.